Have you heard of the 12 seasons of Texas?
I mean, have I heard of them or have I experienced them pretty much my whole life?
You've experienced them, but could you on a plot chart or something tell me what those are exactly?
Meteorologically speaking, no. I don't know that I could. Well, look, if we were playing Family Feud, I think I could probably get top four accurate in terms of what people think they are, but everybody has their own interpretations of what those 12 should be.
Okay. Well, let's start with spring, actual spring. We're still a little bit a ways from that. Then you have summer. Then you have what's called Hell's Front Porch. Then you have false fall, and then second summer, and then actual fall.
Yeah,
And then
false
that
fall,
brings us,
second summer, actual fall, those are the ones that my mind goes to because I hate them so much.
oh, do you? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I like actual fall here, though.
I enjoy actual fall, but I resent it for not being longer. That's the main thing. You can love and hate something in equal measure.
Okay. And then let's bring us back around to winter. We've passed winter exactly on this here. We're in what's now called full spring,
Yes. Yes.
where it is temperate and lovely, but second winter is coming. Second winter, I think, is specifically going to come on Saturday night when this game is happening because it's going to get down into the 50s during the course of the game. So layer up, and then it's going to get down to the 40s overnight. So, and then that's going to bring us to the spring of deception. And then there's third winter, and then the pollinating is the last of the seasons. So, how are you enjoying full spring? What have you done that's celebrating?
Enjoying it. I mean, the long and the short of it is the pollinating can come at any time, as we found roughly 7 days ago, and then it'll get washed away, and then the pollinating will come back. So, as ordered as it sounds, any and all of these can just appear at a moment's notice with absolutely no warning or reasonable logic to them. But yeah, second spring, whichever one we're in right now. Full spring, I've had occasional nice, breezy, cool walks outside where the most I need is a light jacket. And even without a light jacket, it's very comfortable. That's the kind of weather that I like to have in this city, but that we are refused so often.
Right. So last night, me and my wife and my daughter went out to St. Elmo's out in Springdale and had some spicy boys and had some beers, and then we went to a K-pop store because my daughter is obsessed with K-pop. So we went from lovely outdoors into a very, very indoor situation. So this K-pop store is essentially a glorified kiosk, which is in the middle of an HEB Plus at 620 in Anderson Mill. But it's just walled. I was going to say wall to wall, but it's really just wall K-pop posters and albums. And my daughter, of course, being the K-pop fan that she is, dropped $75 on K-pop stuff and then got a free album in the process. So, and there's also a band called Twice, which is coming, which resulted in me and my brother-in-law making a lot of who's on first style jokes about Twice,
Phil,
as you can imagine.
Oh, Phil, there's a band called Twice. As if you have to tell me. Look, I'm a Chotsuyu stan, and I don't even have a bias, but yeah, no, definitely.
So you know them.
I'm a once. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't have to. So I don't have to tell you twice.
No, you don't have to tell me twice. Okay.
See, it's so easy.
Emergency podcast. Verde did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hurry up, shut up, hurry up, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies, the K-pop pun emergencies, oh my goodness, we just saw Austin lose 2-0 to Sporting Kansas City in a Coachella match emergency. Is that an emergency? Is that emergency level? Does that constitute emergency?
No, hold on. Just to start off with, losing to Sporting Kansas City in a match that is designed to not matter. Show me the Coachella Valley Invitational Trophy. Show me that trophy, Phil.
Yeah.
In what way? the winning and losing, there are score lines, and there's winning and losing at what you are able to do in a preseason. And as I would say, dire takes, concerned takes. And this isn't to say that I'm not wholly unconcerned or not worried. I wanted to see more fireworks. What would have worried me would have been if, in what we did see from Coachella, if we had not seen them just trying stuff out, because that's what these preseason matches should be. They should not be rolling out their best first game home opener tactics. Why would they do that before said home opener? To me, that would be tactically unsound. For me, not happy with the scoreline. I'm not as unhappy with the 2 red cards as a lot of people are. To me, getting a couple of spicy red cards in a fake match that doesn't mean anything, it bonds guys, right? It's something fun to look back on. It's hey, I got those red cards, got that out of my system. Don't need to do that during the season.
Well, let's hope so.
To me, it's something that if you've got guys that might be prone to that kind of thing, you want them to do that before a match with a very physical, very rough and ready Minnesota. Like the way that Minnesota looked at Coachella, like they're ready to fight. They are ready to scrap. They are ready to provoke, because look at the state of their roster. Look at the state of their club. They're getting a bunch of stuff figured out. There's no guarantee that James is even going to be with the team on Saturday, let alone playing. Like, is he match ready? I don't know that for a fact. For Austin's purposes, what it looked like they got out of Coachella was, even if everybody wasn't playing all of the competitive minutes that you would expect or that you would want them to during the regular season, you had the core guys of the squad, including the guy still recovering from an ACL tear, cohering and getting together as a group, where Sporting Kansas City has 15 guys on the roster. Like, they're going to be signing second team guys so that they are not roster non-compliant, right? Like, there are many, many bigger problems than not hoisting the Coachella Valley Cup, which is not a real thing because it doesn't exist.
It'd be cool if it was.
I mean, to you, maybe, not to me. Like, I think the value in Coachella is that it is a fake tournament that doesn't matter. Like, that's my Roy Kent of it is, all right, it's a fake tournament. Doesn't matter. All right. Yeah. I don't know why he started a stray Australian. I'm ashamed of myself, but that's what you get out of me. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand fully. Okay. I don't understand in isolation oh my God, a 2-0 loss to Sporting Kansas City. Everything is on fire. Everything is doomed as a take. But then in the context of what has the last 3 years been like for this fan base? Okay, then I get it. I totally get it.
Right. Okay.
Like, I don't invalidate it, but aside from being an optimist, I like to try to be a realist. I like to try to recalibrate from zero. Last season was what last season was for Mirto Zuni, for some other players who had not great runs of play. And the question that we will see when actual competitive play is happening, which to me, the NYCFC match is the closest we got to a real competitive match experience across the preseason.
Yeah.
That was the one that felt the most. It was, we're doing this in front of our fans in our house for Austin in terms of viewing it as a competitive challenge. That is the closest to it.
Right. Albeit with key offensive players out in that NYC game. Still, though, and again, Estevez has his plan throughout the entirety of this preseason. You see him working certain things out. Obviously, they're not doing this as a 90-minute start to finish match. There's pieces of things being implemented throughout these games like we've talked about. But the thing that concerns me a little bit here, and should probably concern fans as well, is they've had 3 matches in front of fans, 1 at Q2, 2 being streamed at Coachella. They've lost those matches by a combined 5-0. So if you want to really pump up your fan base heading into the season, you lay 3 goose eggs in the games that fans are actually able to watch. So that to me is a little bit concerning. And again, I understand what they're trying to do. That's thought Stuver had some interesting quotes after the Saturday match, which we'll get into in a second here. But just that if you're trying to instill this confidence in the fan base that things are different, that there will be scoring, that you're not going to see the dearth of scoring that you saw in the first half of last year, and then you have these kind of performances in front of the fans, it's a little distressing.
I think that's a completely reasonable take, honestly, even though I disagree with it from the perspective of, and this is where I'll be accused of being a plant, is to me, that's a marketing problem, not a sporting problem. To me, from the sporting perspective, they, in the horse riding terms, they ran the preseason hard and put it away wet. Like they did as much as they could with the legs that they had healthy. And in terms of bringing those legs that were healing from injury back out, I think they did as much as they reasonably could without risking things for 2026A, the first season of 2 seasons that makes up 2026. I think that they are being pragmatic. I think they're being smart. To me, the off-season roster moves are among the smartest across MLS for one big reason, and it's that they recruited in from MLS talent, or talent that knows MLS as a league, that knows the dynamics of MLS, where their new pieces all know the league, they all know the travel, they are not acclimating in the way that big names like, I don't know, Lorenzo Insigne. Insigne was going to solve all of Toronto's problems, wasn't he? With that giant bag of money attached to him. To me, that's one of the big turnarounds in perspective on who they looked for and who they got, is they knew that they needed people who know the league, know the rigors of travel. And on paper, pulling in James for half of a season, plenty of people probably still think, oh, Austin absolutely should have done that. Dude's a locker room nightmare. Dude's a locker room nightmare, and he might look great on paper, but that doesn't mean that one for one he's just going to translate perfectly and neatly into this system, into this club.
Right, exactly. I mean, this is a team that is not used to playing that kind of style. I don't know what Cam Knowles is trying to institute, but they were a very, very different team last year, which we'll get into a little bit later with an interview that I'm just going to nudge at right now. We're not going to reveal it, but we're going to talk a little bit about playing styles and things like that. Just leave that be for a second. But yeah, dropping James into the middle of this team that is used to not having the ball. I mean, albeit they've lost some of the players that made them kind of a team that, you know, did fairly well last year. So, but also stylistically maybe didn't necessarily jive with not having a lot of the ball. But I still think it's going to be, they're a mild hot mess heading into Saturday's match, even though obviously they had some success against, for instance, SKC at Coachella. But I wonder what they're going to be like. We'll get into, obviously, a little bit more perspective as the week goes on as to what Minnesota is going to be as a team. We'll obviously do some Verde All Day coverage on that as we get closer. But I'm a little bit confused as to what Austin is, but I'm also a little bit confused as to what Minnesota is, which, of course, is first game of the season. So not unusual, especially with all the changes that happen through the off season and only being able to see little bits and pieces of the evolution.
Yeah, my big thing is, if we're looking at opening day competition, let's just look at the first breath of the season. Minnesota is in a much more precarious situation overall, where they, to me, are radically more prone to just falling apart. The issues that Austin has are more about match fitness in ways that aren't guys not trying hard enough or not being worth their salaries or something like that. They're just getting back from being unwell. And tactically, I think there's a fair amount that has been held back very intentionally, where they are looking, from my impression on what we saw, as well as what we had reported about the Chicago Fire match, it feels like they are messing around with the deep game of not necessarily this is the game shape that they are going to start with. This is the tactical formation that they're going to start with. That is going to be the primary attacking shape, their primary defensive shape, even their secondary or maybe even tertiary. But just looking at just how flexible different new pieces can be in different places. If we'll address one of the elephants in the room, where they're putting Joseph Rosales has been a big point of contention among the fan base. And I'm not defending, oh, he should always be on the left wing for in my mind's eye, in my dreams, in my wishes and hopes, Phil. Joseph Ursala is on the left wing. Oh, it's my dearest wish and hope. No, nothing of the kind. I think they are looking at where they can put him. And if putting him out of position is something that discombobulates the opposition in a helpful way, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, I would rather it not work in the preseason in matches that mean literally nothing when it comes to the supporter season, the supporter shield, the season standings overall, the conference standings, all that kind of stuff. I want them to work that kind of stuff out and mess around with it. Frankly, I love the idea of them just having Minnesota on the back foot, of knowing what they can expect Austin to be having Joseph Ursala's do. Or who knows? Maybe they bring him in off the bench against Minnesota. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. The way that they have been playing lineups, none of it has been, okay, this is our primary 11 and this is what we're rolling out. More often than not, we didn't get a consistent 11 the entire preseason, right?
Yeah.
To me, tactically, that's a good thing in terms of keeping your opposition wondering. On the other side of Minnesota, who do they have? DC United.
Mm-hmm.
DC United.
Yep. Who is better, but is still DC United.
Still DC United. And then Charlotte, who's decent. In Charlotte, home of this year's All-Star game, which I forget when that's supposed to happen among the 70 million different things happening this year.
Who knows?
But I
don't think they've announced it yet, actually.
I don't think they have announced the timing of it. I don't know when it's happening. It's happening sometime.
Wedge it in, yeah.
You do it right after the World Cup. That way everybody will opt out. Everybody will ask for the Messi permission slip to get out of it and pay a fine.
Messi's never going to play an All-Star game, is he? Unless they have it in Miami.
Unless they call it the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But last season, whatever reasons he had them. You have your worries, you have your concerns about what you saw in the preseason. Mm-hmm. What did you see that you liked, or what did you speculatively see different than we saw last preseason under Nico? Year over year, what do you think?
Yeah, well, this is going to dovetail a little bit into Nico and Brad's comments from Saturday. So that's a nice setup there. Thank you. So
you're welcome.
I did like what I saw in the first half on Saturday. I did like that they were more expansive, that those front players behind Azuni were fluid, that they were trying a lot of diagonal passes, that they were trying to really kind of push tempo at points, which again, maybe that was just an exercise that they were doing. Maybe that's not indicative of how they're going to play a full 90. Maybe they were just kind of going hard for a half to see if they could do that and sustain that. And maybe we're just going to see that in like little 5 and 10 minute bursts during games. But it was encouraging to see that. I've liked Nelson and what we've seen from him this preseason. His speed, I think, is very helpful. I think he's got good ideas. I think he's got good vision. I think he's a really good addition onto this team. Yeah, that's kind of what I like. I don't know that I like the Rosales experimentation. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I like what I've seen in terms of continued defensive lapses. So Estevez described the performance on Saturday as very inconsistent, which again, I don't know if he talked some of it being recovering players, still developing how we're going to play, new players that are fitting in, and you see glimpses of what we want to see in the team. But he talks about obviously having to keep working hard, which is a mantra for the whole preseason, right? So we've been hearing that throughout. And then Stuver, I thought, was really interesting in his insights. He says early in the first half, we were organized. There was a lot of good structure. Having Fuku and Murdo back was a big help for us. You could see we were finding spots in the middle of play early on, and we were having good combination play. But the next step for us is turning that into offensive attacks. And then a thinly veiled reference to the 2 red cards. As the game went on, we allowed our emotions to get the best of us. And we've talked a lot about individual responsibility for players throughout the season, throughout the past few seasons. So it's something we need to address, something we need to talk about. And we know that as Austin FC players, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. So that seemed a little pointed on his part about, because again, when you are 2 men down, who is left hung out to dry more than any other player on the field? The
guy between the sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's very fair. And it's good for him to be addressing that in that form the way that he did. And like I said, to me, the way that I see that as a positive is I would rather they work their out now than all of a sudden in a home opener have a red card, let alone 2 red cards. Like to me, 2 red cards in a home opener, that is welcome to the spoon territory of something is wrong. In preseason,
not to say that couldn't happen, not to say that like just because they up in preseason doesn't mean that they're not going to up in the opener. We've seen that before. So.
We have seen astonishingly bad stuff in home openers for Austin.
There is a well of hang up that you can extract from throughout the season. It's not just limited to preseason.
Yeah. To me, it is get your heads on right. Don't be complacent from the jump and make those dumb mistakes before the points on the board actually matter. But yeah, I'd recommend everybody take a look at your latest piece, which leads with that quote from Nico, very inconsistent. And it gets a bit more into the Rosales experiment and what they're doing with Rosales. I think it's going to be interesting to see how these next few days let these guys' minds settle, their tensions relax. In the case of some of them that have anxieties about how they need to really put up or shut up, Mirto Uzuni and Robert Taylor, both. They've got something to prove this season. I'm on the record saying that I liked what I saw from Robert Taylor before he got injured. Then he got injured and they were at a bit of a deficit. And I think they brought him back a bit sooner than was wise out of necessity. And he was not quite there. And they were climbing a steeper hill than a guy coming back from injury and the type of injury that he had on that leg, then he could reasonably shoulder just based on the limits of physics.
Right.
But
he's had some good moments this preseason.
Yeah, he has. And
not just moments, but good moments.
Yeah. Like good moments and solid, like keeping his head in the game. I like what I've seen, but I need more data, as I've kind of been indicating. I need more data and understand what it is that they are planning to do. And we will see that when they are playing actual competitive minutes, because look, once the clock is ticking, the clock is ticking. But that's where I withhold a fair amount of judgment because we have not actually hit those competitive minutes yet. I want that additional data. I just don't have it yet for my needs.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, like with Taylor, I mean, he had good moments. He also had like kind of one particularly bad moment that we saw where
but everybody does. Everybody does, right?
It's preseason, right? Yeah, everybody's
and
still
soccer's a game of mistakes.
Working the rust off. Yeah. Your favorite phrase, right?
Soccer's a game of mistakes. Soccer's a game of mistakes, man. Like you remember those Worldies, you remember those Olympicos, you remember those once in a decade, once in a generation plays, but that one screw up in a game among 34 in a given season, depending on when it comes, depending on what mood you're in, depending on what kind of week you have had, the team has had, whatever, one mistake can just look like the most catastrophic campaign-ending failure. Right. Until the next week when it literally doesn't matter and 3 more points go on the board.
It does, right? You remember that Kip Keller back pass? You remember that flubbed Mirto Uzuni penalty kick? Well, which one? The one that contributed to the Open Cup final loss or the one that contributed to the playoff exit?
Well, that's the thing is you remember those. And then there are the other mistakes that I think that trying to pin everything on the one mistake that made something go catastrophically bad belies the various other mistakes. Owen Wolff himself has had bad games. People have been very generous to him because his average is so high. And I think in cases like Taylor, with him consistently being healthy and getting consistent minutes, give me more of a sample size. I'll make the CJ Fodre comparison. I'm real high on CJ. I think he's a great player. I think he has a very high ceiling of potential. At the same time, I think that there would be voices saying, oh, play him all the time. He's the generational talent. He's going to solve all the team's problems. He should be playing a full 90 every match. When he played a full 90 or close to a full 90, we saw that he wasn't just unlocking everything in the final third all by himself. He was not just add CJ. He fixes everything. And that's the caution that I would have when it comes to expectations is even when that first match is done, give it a few matches. Like everybody should be looking at this squad with this revised roster, with this particular mix of guys. I think this is something where the better part of Valor is to give them a chance to make mistakes. Say, let's make mistakes. Let's please make mistakes. How do they recover from them? That's what makes the difference in especially a marathon season of 2 seasons like we're looking at this year.
Right. Yeah. So is there anything else that we need to say about the preseason? Putting a bow on it here?
I mean, we saw, here we go. Here's your nerdy tidbit, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
We did, in fact, for one time and one time only, see Facundo Torres play in the Dillo kit.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
One could customize one of those rapidly going on further and further sale Armadillo Authentics with Facundo Torres on the back of it because he did play in it once.
Right. On
as did
Valentine's
Rosales,
Day.
as did all these guys.
If you want to commemorate that memorable 2-0 loss that several hundred people saw.
Some people, hey, don't yuck people's yums, Phil. Some people have a very particular way of celebrating this club. Okay. There's a guy we both know who got the new rooted kit and got Julio Cascante's name and number put on the back of it, even though he's no longer on the team. Okay. He got the Dillo kit with Rodney Reddes' name on it, even though he was no longer on the team.
Right. That is his tradition.
Yeah. Everybody
salute to fallen heroes.
Let people have their special thing, Phil. That's all I'm asking.
All right. So, and then tomorrow or today as this drops, perhaps. I'm not sure if this is dropping Monday night or Tuesday morning, but you'll be off to Rotoland. So
yeah, I'm going to Rotoland for RotoFest.
What are you anticipating asking or learning?
To me, the big thing for me is, as we have learned, as we've gotten more comfortable with the guy, is that to be fair to everybody gets a couple of questions, then we go back around, and then there's the thing where Cam tells us that we're out of time, and Rodo says, I don't believe in watches. Ask whatever you want. The way that we've settled in rapport-wise with him is he'll answer questions for as long as we want to ask them at this point when he does these things and holds court. And I think that the more reasonable and nuanced we can be early on, we know him, he knows us. I think asking about the potential Mirto Zuni transfer, it's a matter of how it's asked. And I've got a particular angle for how I want to talk about it. That
if somebody doesn't flub it first and
we'll
come out and say, what's the deal? Why did that fall apart? Right up.
Not the way that I'm planning to ask about it.
Nope, not the way to ask that.
I think
Journalism 101.
In a few ways, I want to ask something that gets at that and various other rumors that have happened, some that have ended up resulting in transfers, some of them that have gone nowhere, some of them that we have been told by various well-informed sources like Tom Bogert were completely invented and made up. And there's a thing in the entertainment industry of negotiating in public of, oh, so-and-so hates their deal with Warner Brothers and therefore they're talking to Netflix, and what they really want is for Warner Brothers to spend more money on their overall deal so they'll make more TV shows or whatever. A similar thing happens in sports, as I've gotten accustomed to. It's all entertainment, man. It's just a different kind of entertainment. People's representatives, some people's clubs that maybe don't even want a given player, but want to make it seem like they are going after a certain caliber of player to appease the rabid European fan base that is threatening to burn down the practice facility. There are so many different things that can go into where those rumors come from. And so rather than go, okay, well, tell us on the record definitively, was this true, wasn't it? I think asking it a certain way, he'll tell us. He'll tell us if there was a potential conversation or what happened there. At the same time, being careful of the fact that he's got this guy on his roster. Like, there is no reason to tell tales out of school or overstep certain boundaries, no matter how much certain folks may demand and insist on the truth. You've got to manage your own house. I'm looking to ask a bit more process-wise from him what those transfer processes are like. So when people hear blank, and what is the actual process? Walk us through the process, Professor.
Yeah.
Like,
because
tell us how it actually goes.
Yeah. I mean, he could be still having conversations about a Zuni for the summer transfer right now. So there could be interest that he's fielding. It could be maybe he's waiting and seeing how the first few months of the season are going to go.
Yeah.
To see if it does work in the sophomore season. And I don't imagine that he's really going to reveal a whole bunch about that. Here's one thing that I'm interested in if this comes around to this. And of course, I'm day jobbing it tomorrow, so sadly can't be there. But I'm wondering about just kind of the value of international spots. And we've seen, obviously, the machinations that happened with selling to the Revs last year. But then we've also seen this year values for these 2 international spots for half a season, which have been about the rate of a full season international roster spot the day before. So just curious about that and the whole green card process, and if you can enlighten us a little bit more about that, because obviously that's a kind of a wild card situation, right?
Totally.
You're not guaranteed a green card, obviously, but at the same time, there's such value on those international spots now that it is in a way predicated on confidence that either can happen or that you're going to be able to fill spots with domestic players.
And that's there are things that I think that I know from digging that I've done, from conversations that I've had on and off the record with different people. The impression that I have is with the sports performer green card, they have to have been here for a year before you even apply for it, is the thing that I'm pretty solid on. I haven't had anybody disagree with me that that's the case. And then from the point that they apply for it, it takes another year generally beyond that. So if you've got a player like Jorge Lostaway, who's been here for a year on the second team, then presumably they would have already started the green card process for him and with him. And in theory, he would be getting that green card roughly on the same schedule as Svatak did. So it's a matter of time, and it's not something that can just be sped up, and there's not like wheels to grease, and there are certain ways that you've got to go about doing things. And my impression is that they are not lacking in terms of, on the legal side of things, doing and filing all the right paperwork to do that kind of thing. But I think to the extent that they're willing to be forthcoming, why don't we just ask him? And that's a piece of the focus that I've got for him, because I know that there's certain answers we've seen. There's certain answers we're just not going to get. Like, he'll tell us about deals after the fact with enough distance in some cases, right? So there might be some previous deals that we get a bit more insight into. There might be some insight into, look, everybody's for sale. Get ready. Somebody you really love might get sold in the summer window. It'll be interesting if we get that teased. Of course, people will then immediately go, give us the name right now. Well, he's not going to do that. But I think we're at the point in the club's maturity that people should be expecting that. People should be expecting that somebody they love, if they're a really great player, earning their love, those players are very much going to be eligible for being sold on, and that's something to be celebrated. As sad as it is to say goodbye to a player like Julio Cascante, who had a very passionate fan base within the fan base, had a true elder statesman role within the club, among the fans, in the locker room, there will be those departures. But when it comes to those younger players that in some cases people have seen grow up in some cases, if Donny Pereira gets a juicy offer, if Owen Wolff gets a juicy offer, and that's what they want, that's the first stage of those deals happening, is the player has to agree to a transfer if they're still within contract. They're within their rights to go, no, I'm going to finish out my contract, which we've seen with spiteful joie de vivre from Chucky Lozano very recently. No, I'd like to see out my remaining contract, you jerks. But this is the good version of that. This is the, yes, I would like to agree to personal terms with this other club because I want to move on to Europe. I want to move on to this club. I want to move on with this next stage of my career.
I think that the fan base does need to prepare for Owen Wolff not being on his team as of New Year's Day 27.
Or sooner. I'm telling you, like, even if he's not playing in a World Cup does a lot to completely reassess the state of the board, especially as Europe is looking at beginning their season on the other side of it.
Right. Yeah. So summer en route to him playing in World Cup 2030 is a possibility.
That's the thing, is not to say that everybody should always listen to all the pundits, but a lot of pundit buzz for a while has been going, Owen Wolff is a next big thing. Keep your eye on Owen Wolff. They are saying that because they are hearing that in addition to feeling that themselves.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, to more data. And on the topic of more data, Phil, you got friends that are big data heads, data mavens that have their own very quite choice takes on different things. We got something special for people as we head into Verde Week here in Austin. What do you got?
Yes. Happy Verde Week, which coincides with Mardi Gras week. So happy Mardi Gras, everybody.
Mardi Gras, Ramadan, Lunar New Year.
Yeah, there's a
Lent.
lot happening here. Yeah.
My beloved Popeye's fish sandwich. My fish sandwich is coming back at Popeye's, Phil.
Lent usually does coincide with Mardi Gras.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of a package deal.
Yeah,
right?
Mardi Gras is the party. Lent is the thing. They're two different things.
Right. Yes, indeed.
Mardi Gras is why HEB stocks the king cake. Lent is why Popeyes has the flounder sandwich that I love so much.
Right. That is religion in a nutshell. That's how it all happens.
Yep. That's all I care about.
But yeah, so what we're going to hear next is we're going to hear a conversation with John Muller. You might know him. He is a Austin native. He's written for The Athletic, really smart guy, really good follow on social media. And he's got a new app called Futi, Futi, which is going to be rolling out this spring officially for people to jump onto. And we'll explain it a little bit in depth here as we go through. But essentially, if you like data and you like following matches the way that you would on, say, FOTMob, but you want to get more information, if you want to get your hands on the kind of data that clubs are using, then this is going to be the app for you. And for nerds like me, it's really fun to look at some of the data that this is going to be unveiling, and we get a little sneak preview of it here. So enjoy the nerdery.
Transition.
We are here with John Muller today, who's going to talk to us about Futi and talk to us about Austin FC and some numbers, and trying to figure out some things about the team based on some numbers and some graphs and charts and all the doodads that he has come up with. So I wanted to first talk to you about just where the genesis of this was, how Futi came to be, and where things are at now compared to when you first started.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me.
Of course.
I'm an Austin guy, so I love doing Austin media. But I very recently was not an MLS guy at all. I was working for The Athletic UK. I was writing a lot about the Premier League and the Champions League and that kind of stuff. And I was doing a lot of data work. That was my beat at The Athletic, was data and tactics stuff.
Mhm.
And I found that fans really liked having journalism that helped explain the game and like new
Right.
tools, new data, like any information. Like I think that modern fans, like they want to know more about the game than maybe they did in the past. And so that was kind of what I built my career on. But I was always kind of frustrated with the state of public soccer data. In the last decade, and especially in the last 5 years, soccer data has come a long way. And the stuff that clubs have access to now is really interesting and rich in ways that most public soccer stats are not. And especially after FBref lost their advanced stats, I was a big FBref fan. I loved that they helped democratize data. When that stuff went away, we're kind of back in the Stone Age, right? It's like American soccer analysis is awesome. Like MLS fans are very lucky that they have that advanced data. But what I wanted to do was basically to help fans get access to the types of analytics that clubs use to understand teams and players, to give fans better tools, basically to understand the questions that we care about, stuff that we talk about. Which players are good? How does this player play? What did this team set up like in this game? All that kind of stuff. And these are things that we can do with data. So I left The Athletic and I started this company called Futi. We're building a live score app. So similar to whatever app you probably already use to check scores and stats on your phone, but built on the types of analytics that clubs use. My co-founder is Mike Imburgio, who works for a bunch of clubs, including some in MLS, to build this kind of stuff. And so we're just trying to bring those tools to fans.
Okay. And then just to back up, just kind of a square one type thing. So what is it about soccer that allows, I know that there's data in other sports, but what in particular about soccer allows fans to access data and to have data tell things that maybe, obviously, I mean, baseball is pretty stats rich and all that, but what is it about soccer in particular that makes data such an essential part as you're seeing it of the fan experience?
That's an interesting question. I would say that soccer has advantages and disadvantages in that area, and both go back to the same thing, which is that it's a very fluid and complex game, especially compared to baseball, right, which is very discrete and it's always been more stats focused than other sports, right? It's the reason that Moneyball happened in baseball 20 years before it started to happen in soccer,
Right.
because it's very easy to measure those discrete events, right? A hit, a runner goes on base, like you can record literally, you can sit there in in the stands and write down everything that happens in a baseball game. You cannot do that in a soccer game unless you're insane. Charles Reeve, who's one of the founders of soccer analytics, literally would sit in the stands at, I think, Hampton games with a headlamp on and his little accounting notebook, like making his own record of everything that happened in a game, right? That was the only way that you could do soccer analytics for a long time. And so as a result, soccer just didn't have any stats at all for most of its history. It was like literally goals were the only thing that anybody recorded.
Mhm.
And goals don't tell you anything about a game. They don't even tell you who the better team was most of the time.
Sure. Right.
It's not very helpful for understanding what's actually going on the pitch.
Mhm.
In the 90s, really, like very recently, we added assists to goals and then we had two stats instead of one. But it really wasn't until Opta came along and started doing that same thing that Charles Reap was doing, but at scale, like writing down every single thing that happened on the ball and producing data out of it, that we got modern soccer stats, right? Then we could start to count up players' passes and we could figure out how much possession a team had, and we could do basic counting stats like that, right? And those are interesting and helpful, and they're definitely better than having no data at all, but they don't actually help you to make a whole lot of sense of such a fluid, complex sport, right?
Mhm.
So that's where soccer is at a disadvantage, is that you need, in some ways, much more advanced stats to do really
Mhm.
useful stuff with soccer data, right? You have to like take all this information about every touch of the ball and you have to process it through machine learning models that are fairly sophisticated. Whereas like baseball, if you just know how much a player gets on base, right? That's a really useful stat.
Mhm.
Soccer, you have to do a lot of stuff with the data before you get to that kind of useful stat.
Right. So when we talk about advanced stats as just a definition, we're talking about things that are beyond just goals and assists, or maybe even like at this point possession, right?
Yeah, I guess I would call basic stats or like counting stats, right? That's taking basically all the touches that a player has on the ball and
Mhm.
maybe breaking them into types and telling you how many they did and maybe how many of those were successful, right? Those are the kinds of stats that you've probably seen a lot. Those are the standard soccer stats. Advanced stats then are not those counting stats. They're things that have used algorithms, usually machine learning models, on top of those things in order to assign values or to extract stylistic information or to analyze whole possessions in a sequence rather than individual events. So basically, what you're trying to do with those models then is to add tactical context and to figure out how much these things matter, right? How much they contribute to the score line. Those are kind of the two basic questions behind advanced stats.
Okay. Yeah. And so one of the things that you're doing now that I noticed, and this jumped out to me, and this is part of the reason that I asked you on here, is that you identified four different playing styles in MLS, and Austin kind of falls into a group with most of the teams. So maybe just walk us through, first of all, what that came from, what kind of the question was that you were trying to answer there, and then a little bit about Austin in relation to the league.
Sure, yeah. So what you're looking at right now is some sort of early data that we've been releasing. We're getting ready to start testing the app with users this spring, but we wanted to give folks some tools to like start to get to know the stats.
Hmm.
And some of the first stuff that we released was stuff around team styles. And what you're talking about is what we actually call team styles, and it's really just a very high level, at a match level, telling you which one of four major styles of play a team used in that game.
Hmm.
And Austin's style of play, their most common one, which they played in about half their games last season, is what we call control and regroup. And
Hmm.
that basically means they were fairly controlled in possession, right? They passed around a lot. They were relatively cautious, at least compared to historical MLS norms, right? They definitely
Sure.
weren't playing Red Bull style soccer on the ball, but they also didn't press a whole lot when they were out of possession. So it was
Hmm.
basically slow in possession, or we'll dig more into that, but controlled in possession, I would say, and
Okay.
then a little bit more passive off the ball. And like you said, this is a standard MLS style right now. Teams are pressing a little bit less than they historically did, but they are much more controlled in possession than they've historically been in MLS. And so Austin is kind of an average team in that sense.
Yeah. And do you have a sense of why that is? Does it just have to do with the kind of personnel that are in MLS? Does it have to do with just 34 game season, long haul, tolerance for draws as well as wins and situations, just try to get into the playoffs, those kinds of things?
Man, that's a big question. And
Yeah.
I love to speculate about this kind of stuff. I can't give you
Yep.
definitive answers, but what I can
Got
tell
it.
you is just that the game itself has been changing a lot at high levels over the last 5 years. And we kind of tell these big, sweeping tactical stories, right? Like Yola kind of defined the last decade of soccer with this, what out of our four styles, his teams have classically played what we call press and possess soccer, right? You
Hmm.
build very carefully, you set up in the opponent's half. When you lose the ball, then you press very aggressively.
Hmm.
And then there was kind of a wave of this German heavy metal football, right? The pressing, the running, like things that have always been very popular in MLS because Red Bull set up here early and then was very successful, which became very influential. So you still have a lot of those what we call launch and squish teams in MLS. Literally, like they'll launch the ball out the field and they'll charge after it and they'll try to squish it right in your
Uh-huh.
half. They're not trying to do anything fancy on the ball, but they are trying to tilt the field toward the opponent's end of the field. But then in the last 5 years, in the top European leagues, teams have started to become much more cautious in possession. And so
Hmm.
pressing styles have changed. A lot of this had to do with the new goal kick rule, which led to sort of a tilt in the balance of how teams built up and how they pressed. So anyway, teams became a lot more like passy at the back, right? Then also in response, some teams sort of got better at setting up in a mid block and being patient about when to press. It wasn't just all out as soon as you lose the ball, like everybody tries to swarm it like that old Red Bull, like the launch and squish thing. It was more
Hmm.
like let's be organized and disciplined. So I think that's what we're seeing. A
Okay.
control and regroup team, that dominant mode is teams that pass patiently and then like probably are more set up in a mid block instead of going all out.
Okay, and then the data you shared with me. So Austin, 47% of their games are characterized as control and regroup. So I'm just wondering, first of all, how you arrive at that over the course of a game, and then just that they're seventh, LAFC being first, 71% control and regroup, and then Galaxy 62%, Sounders 59%. So this seems like not all the teams on here are necessarily successful in 2025, but most of these were. Most of these were playoff teams that had this kind of style. So just curious about, first of all, how you arrive at that number match by match, and then what it's saying to employ this kind of strategy, what it might hint about your personnel, what it might hint at in terms of your experience watching the team in the stands.
Mhm. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you pointed out that there's not a super tight correlation between team styles and team success, right? It's
Mhm.
possible to play any one of these four styles very well or very badly. And so, like the Galaxy were not the most successful team last season, but they were somewhat stylistically similar to Austin.
Mhm.
So that's part of what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to separate style from quality. And the way that we went about building these team models started from something called tactical tendencies.
Mhm.
And so that's another layer of team style data that we have in the app. And it measures at a much more granular level, sort of how teams behave in different phases of the game. So,
Mhm.
for example, in the build up, we look at do you build patiently or do you build directly? Do you build
Mhm.
centrally or do you build out wide?
Mhm.
When you lose possession, we look at do you counter press or do you fall back? When you are playing against the opponent's buildup. Are you pressing very aggressively? Are you sitting back? Right. Different phases of the game have different stylistic metrics. We've also got one that I like called chaos and control, which is very relevant for understanding MLS. And
Mhm.
that literally is just how much of the game is in what we call contested phases of play, where the ball is kind of loose, right? Everybody's scrambling for it because it's a high ball in the air, or there's just been a turnover and nobody's really secured possession yet.
Mhm.
So anyway, all these tendencies can tell us some information about a team style in different parts of the game. And then we built another model on top of that that helps reduce all those tendencies down to these four main categories.
Okay.
And when we built that other model, what we found was that the best way to separate teams, unsurprisingly, is how controlled they are in possession. It's very
Mhm.
easy to see some teams really like to have the ball, and some teams probably would rather play against the ball, or they're just
Right.
not good enough to play with the ball.
Okay.
That's a major divider. And then the other
Mhm.
thing, the other sort of axis of this grid is just defensively, how aggressive are you, right? Are you trying to get the ball back right away? Are you trying to fall back and be a little bit more compact? And so that's a very like easy way to understand all of these tendencies in a sort of 2 by 2 grid.
Right. So looking at Austin in 2025, getting this data and arriving at this control and regroup kind of style that they had. And by the way, so looks like 18% of their games they were bunker and counter, 6% launch and squish, 29% press and possess. So just curious about what kind of tendencies you saw both offensive and defensively with them. And I guess maybe let's start defensively first, because you had some pretty interesting stuff that you shared with me before about where they were successful and where they weren't successful. And it seemed like that was something that certainly matched up with eye tests.
Yeah, so we have another batch of data that we've released that talks about in each phase of the game, how much time our team's spending in it, how successful are they? And what we mean by success is essentially if you are in a phase of play like the buildup and you end that phase of play with a better chance of scoring than you had at the start of that phase of play, then you've
Mm-hmm.
won that phase of play, right? And what we
Okay.
find is that for Austin against the ball, they were very easy to play through in most phases of possession. Teams were very successful at moving the ball from one phase to another one with a higher like goal probability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except when they got close to goal. And so
Yeah.
I think opponents were like above the 85th percentile in every phase of organized possession at moving the ball up the pitch. But then when they got to Austin's third, when they got to that finishing phase, their success rates went way down. I think they were, what was it, like 13th percentile or something? Towards Austin's defense was towards the top of the league. Austin's opponents were towards the bottom of the league in that last phase. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So if you say just you throw out transition defense is bad based on vibes, that's one observation. But what you were finding basically statistically showed that Austin was bad at transition defense. But then when it came down to final third lockdown, then they were pretty good at stuffing out chances.
Yeah, I think they did. They had a lot of counterattacks against them. I think our data
Hmm.
shows,
Okay.
but also against organized possession. Like they were
Hmm.
just kind of passive off the ball until
Okay.
they sat back and got deep and compact, and then they were good.
Right. Okay. And do you think that that reflects then coaching? Does that reflect personnel? I guess it's a combination of those things, right? I mean, I guess, and I assume that when coaches get this kind of data and they realize that there are these kind of weaknesses in the phases of play, then that's where they maybe want to work on things, and that's where they can utilize that data to actually emphasize things in coaching.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, certainly I would say that the way that a team plays is always partly coaching and partly players.
Hmm.
I tend to think it has more to do with the players, and I think you can sort of see that in Austin's data.
Hmm.
I haven't looked at their stylistic data against the ball, but I know that with the ball, they play fairly similarly under Estevez than they did under Wolf, right?
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
well, we can talk about some of those differences because there are
Yeah.
some interesting differences, but in general, like they haven't changed all that drastically stylistically compared to the rest of the league
Oh, that's
from one
interesting.
coach
Okay.
to another.
Okay. How have they changed though, offensively? Like what things have you noticed?
So the big thing that we can pull out of the data is under Wolf, they were more of what we would have called a press and possess team, right?
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
were slow in almost every phase of the game. They were cautious,
Hmm.
but they would get to the opponent's half, and then they would do a pretty good job of like pressing against the ball when they lost
Hmm.
it. Of course, that opened them up at the back. So, maybe they wish they were more defensively compact, and maybe that's
Right.
why they
Right.
moved that direction under rest of us. But the big thing that we see on the ball from 2023 to now is that Austin is getting more. They like fast breaks a lot more than they used to. So they'll still
Mm,
build
okay.
very slowly at the back,
Hmm.
but when they get to midfield, they no longer circulate side to side and like play slowly through the midfield. They
Okay.
tend to go pretty quick, right? They'll go out to the wings. So we see a lot
Hmm.
of like wide attacking and we
Yeah.
see more fast breaks than slow progression in midfield. And I think that's been the big stylistic story.
Okay. And that's some eye test stuff then that is corresponding with things that you saw in the data.
Yeah, I mean, I like every time I went to an Austin game, I'm personally predisposed to like press and possess teams, so I would get
Hmm.
frustrated that they were playing too fast up the field because that did lead to them then also being easier to play against in the other
Right.
direction, right? It
Right.
became a
Yeah.
more sort of end-to-end game.
Hmm.
But Estevez was looking at this and saying, guys, why aren't we playing faster? Like that's what we're good
Hmm.
at, right? I think he said this the
Right.
other week. Like I saw a lot of moments when I wish that we attacked faster. And
Hmm.
I think the data backs him up on that because Austin was very, very effective at fast breaks last season. And they
Hmm.
were very ineffective when they did try to do slow midfield progression.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And that kind of harkens to something that Estevez was saying in preseason, where he was talking about them playing too horizontally and wanting to be more vertical. So I guess that's his translation of what
exactly.
you just said there in the data, right? So
Exactly.
we can probably expect even more kind of fast break style play, right? So
They
maybe
they
not
certainly seem
quite,
to be evolving that way. Yeah.
yeah, maybe not quite launch and squish, but maybe maybe kind of more in that direction a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. Although because they're not a super aggressive pressing team, they might wind
Mhm.
up more in the bunker and counter. We've already talked about how they are most effective defending compactly. So maybe they'll
Mhm.
play bunker and counter. And that tends to have a bad reputation because it's associated with teams that are really just trying to make the most out of bad players. But some teams can
Mhm.
be very effective that way. Like Minnesota United was a classic
Sure.
bunker and counter team last season that
Mhm.
was very effective.
Yeah, I was
And
looking at the top seven stylistically, and it's FC Dallas, Minnesota, Colorado, Philly, Montreal, San Jose, and DC. So not the best assortment of teams, but looks
I mean, you
like
got
in
the
there
Shield
there's
winners in there, right? Like,
you do,
yeah.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. And Dallas made the playoffs. Obviously, Minnesota got quite far. So yeah, so it doesn't it's not necessarily mean yeah. Certainly, you can understand why like teams like DC United and Montreal might do that, but also teams can have success with that style of play, and a lot of it
Yeah,
probably
and
just
that's
has to
that's
do
what I
with
love about these
personnel.
styles. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can be good in any one of these styles and you can be bad in any one.
So what else did you learn about Austin just looking at their 2025? What are some bigger takeaway things that you saw from just your tour through the data?
So we're still uploading new data this week. We're gonna put out a lot of new stuff that hopefully listeners to this podcast will go play around with and extract their own things that they
Hmm.
find interesting. But one of the things that we were looking at right before we got on this call was player ratings, which are
Hmm.
going up this week, and everybody loves player ratings. So I gave you a little
Sure.
sneak peek at those.
You did, yeah.
And those had some surprising things for me about Austin's play that I would
Mhm.
love to talk about if you want to get into how those player ratings work.
Absolutely, yeah. So Kolmanic and Uzuni are the two best players on the team, and Owen Wolf is way down there. So let's
Yeah.
let's get a little bit into what happened there and then explain that. To me, it looks a lot maybe you can talk about the correlations between this and American Soccer Analysis has goals added, and we've talked about that before, where it looks at various kind of actions that happen within possession. I believe you've done some work on that as well with ASA. So I believe you were one of the first people that really advanced that as a metric. And it is kind of a puzzling metric, but it is one that is pretty interesting and does give some perspective on the game.
Yeah, so it's probably helpful to think of like the two basic ways that people do player ratings.
Mhm.
And one is sort of the standard stats way, right? Using those old counting stats that we talked about.
Mhm.
Most apps that you see will give you player ratings that basically tell you if you scored a goal in that game, you were good, right? Which sure, I mean that's one way to look at it, but there's a lot
Right.
of other stuff that goes into the game. And so
I think Landon from Moon Tower, his line is if you're a corpse and you're in front of goal and two balls ping off you, you're going to get like an 8 player rating, I think is kind of how he's
yeah, yeah,
characterized that.
exactly. I love Landon. So the way that we do it is very different from that. And we do it using this class of model that you were talking about called the possession value model. And what that does is it's sort of like XG in that it's based on goal probabilities rather than
Hmm.
actual goals scored.
Hmm.
But unlike XG, which is just estimating goal probabilities at the time of a shot,
Hmm.
our model measures goal probabilities at every single touch, every single moment in the game. It's
Hmm.
telling you, okay, in the near future, this team has maybe a 5% chance of scoring and a 2% chance of conceding, right?
Hmm.
But let's say you're in that situation and then you play a really good line breaking pass. So now
Hmm.
your team has like a 10% chance of scoring in the near future and maybe only a 1% chance of conceding.
Hmm.
And so you can say, you can do that math. Okay, well, we had a net positive 3%, and now we've got a positive 9. And so they've added basically 6% goal probability to their team at this situation, right?
Hmm.
And that's a lot of goal probability because, a 6% chance of scoring is like, that's already a pretty decent shot. If you can
Hmm.
do that from midfield, then you've added a lot of value even before you get to a shot. Even if your team never actually winds up taking a shot, we can tell you you've added a lot of goal probability. That's
Hmm.
the kind of math that our player ratings start from. So
Hmm.
not just like, did they score a goal, but did they do things that in general are expected to help their team get into good goal
Hmm.
scoring positions
Right.
or expected to help them defend better. And so it's a much more holistic way at looking at the value that the players add to their team.
Hmm. Right. But it does kind of derive from some eye test things, right? You'll see Kolmanic send diagonal balls in or crosses in, or you'll see Azuni be in positions where he has fairly decent high XG chances to score. And those, I guess, would translate into those player ratings, right?
Yeah, I mean, like Kolmanic has a 75 creation rating for that
Hmm.
skill, which is exactly what you just talked about, right?
Right.
And we should see that for Izuni. Yeah, he's got fairly high dribbling. He's
Hmm.
actually fairly low for receptions, and
Hmm.
that's I think partly because he's a tweener, right? He's like sort of a
Hmm.
striker, sort of a winger, and so
Yeah.
he's sometimes being compared to strikers even when he's playing a little bit more like a winger. And so
Hmm.
he's not getting in the box as much as you might expect other center forwards to, which means
Right,
he's not
right.
receiving those high value passes as much. Frequently, he was playing like a second striker, right? He might
Hmm.
play behind Vasquez, and Vasquez would be the guy getting those high value balls. So Vasquez's reception rating is really high, right?
Sure.
He gets on the end of passes close to goal. He bullies center backs. He puts the ball
Hmm.
in net. Uzuni plays in a different way, and you can see some of that in their skill ratings.
Okay. And then Owen Wolf, not as highly rated as you might think.
Yeah, this one's fascinating to me because like everybody loves Owen Wolf. He's a fan favorite, he's a media favorite, and he's never been a favorite of this kind of goal probability model.
Hmm.
And those players are always the most interesting to me. Bill James, who's the father of baseball's advanced stats,
Hmm.
had a saying. He said, if you've got a stat that four times out of five it tells you what you think is right, and one time out of five it surprises you, then you've got something really worthwhile, right? If it tells you what you think all the time, then it's not useful. If it never tells you what you think, then it's probably garbage, right? But if it's
Right,
four
right.
out of five times, it's right. So I like that one out of five player who you're like, okay, yeah, these lists mostly make sense, but everybody thinks Owen Wolf's good. Why does this model not like him so much? And usually in that case, uh, it can have to do with a couple of things. It can have to do with players who like get on the ball a lot and maybe like create a lot of chances, but they're also wasting a lot of opportunities.
Mm.
And or it can sometimes have to do with players who get on the ball a lot because they're always dropping to the ball. And so they're always touching the ball, but that also means they're not creating space for their teammates. They're not receiving balls in high value areas. So like
Hmm.
those kinds of things are where you might see a lot of divergence between what traditional stats value and also what the eye test values. Because when we watch a game, we tend to watch what happens on the ball much more than we
Hmm.
watch what happens off the ball, right? You have to concentrate
Right.
a lot harder on the game to see all that other stuff.
Hmm.
And so I think that's probably what's going on with Wolf. Like if we look at his skill ratings, he's about average for dribbling. He's below average for shooting. Again, he scored a fair number of goals last season, but they were very frequently like from pretty far away.
Hmm.
They were kind of low value chances that he shot really well. But our
Okay.
shooting rating is valuing, are you creating good shots? And because he's
Hmm.
not the kind of guy who like crashes the box, that's why that's lower.
Right.
And then if you look at like his receiving rating is a 27 out of 100.
Hmm. Hmm.
Again, that's just telling us that he is very frequently dropping to the ball rather than he's playing on the wing a lot. He's not the kind of winger who's getting into the box. He's not the kind of winger who's running in behind a lot.
Hmm.
And so that means that he's not creating opportunities for his teammates to add value by, breaking lines.
And
On the other,
positionally, what is he considered here? I mean, that could be
so
another.
Yeah, so we actually don't use positions as in like where you're lining up on the team sheet. What we
Okay.
use is something called roles, which is similar, but it's
Mm.
telling us where you actually played compared to the rest of your teammates.
Okay.
And Wolf is one of those guys who sometimes he will line up at the wing on the team sheet and then he'll wind up playing in midfield for most of the game, or vice
Hmm.
versa, right? He's a
Right.
very
Right.
positionally versatile
Yes.
player.
Right.
And
Right.
so using these match level roles, we can make sure that we're using the right baseline. We're comparing him to the right position. You see his creation rating is really high. That's his best attribute, right?
Mm.
And I think that that's like that tracks, right? He's
Sure. Stands to reason. Yeah.
definitely the creative engine of this team. Although,
Mhm.
a lot of people think that this team still needs another creator. He's the best they've got right now.
Who
Except
thinks
maybe
that?
some people have said that.
Yeah, a few. And then anything else that surprised you on this? I mean, I know that Julio Cascante was kind of the XG king for Austin FC a lot of the years until 25, where he wasn't playing as much. I'm just wondering if there's anything else that kind of jumped out as maybe a player having more value than we anticipated. I mean, Kolmanic was one that looked like a pretty solid example, but wondering if there's anybody else there that raised your eyebrows a little bit.
So I was pleased to see that Danny Pereira scores pretty high on this.
Okay, good.
None of Austin's players are really standouts one way or the other. I mean, there's some players who have pretty bad ratings. None of them have like super high ratings for last season, which
Okay,
probably not that surprising.
sure.
But Pereira has one of the better ratings on the team. That tracks for me. Like he's always my
Hmm.
favorite player to watch on the team.
Hmm.
He's got really good dribbling rating, obviously. Like I don't think that'll surprise anybody. But he's also good at receiving. He's good at creating. He's good at linking up. He's kind of an all-around good player. He's not a high shooting rating player, but that also won't surprise anybody.
Right,
He's kind of
exactly.
the midfield engine, and I think he does a really good job of dictating play for the team.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, because I
That
mean,
kind of thing.
he doesn't shoot a lot. When he does, occasionally he like throws out a hip.
Yeah, right, exactly. But like that kind of thing is exactly where this type of player rating shines, right? Because
Hmm.
Daniel Pereira is not going to score goals and he's not going to get high player ratings on kind of the basic stats types of ratings. But this thing
Hmm.
that's measuring all the things that he's doing throughout the
Yeah,
game, it's going to do a better job of capturing his value.
Yeah, so this essentially says that he does contribute value for increasing the chances that Austin does create, like chances that might be middling to poor with his influence become better chances for, say, an Azuni or a Bukari or a Vasquez before he got hurt, right?
Yeah, and I guess I wouldn't even use the word chances because people associate that with shots, but I would say that
Hmm.
he increases the value of his team's possessions, right? He does
Okay.
things on and off the ball that just help the team move the ball towards the opponent's goal and away from theirs, right?
Hmm.
He's basically helping them to get into better goal scoring situations.
Hmm. Yeah, and so this will kind of segue into I'm curious about when this rolls out and all that, but you've had some people testing things out and they've done some pretty interesting kind of finds and visualization so far, and you were sharing some stuff with me a little bit before we talked. You want to talk a little bit about that and what's maybe surprised you about people using the tools?
Yeah, so part of what we've been doing here, like I said, is we're trying to release data just so that people can start to get a feel for it, right? Because a
Hmm.
lot of these stats are going to be very new to a lot of people, right? This is not stuff that you've had public access to before. And so we wanted to just put that data in people's hands, let them ask
Hmm.
questions, let them tell us, hey, this makes sense to me, or I have questions about this, or just go off and analyze their own team using as much data as we can give them to like tell their own stories and ask their own questions. Because
Hmm.
I can't go, I would love to go on every team's podcast and do this kind of thing all the time. But I want fans to be able to answer these questions for themselves, right? And
Right.
so we've already seen some of that. Like Jake Burgess is a writer for Sounder at Heart in
Hmm.
Seattle, and he's been doing some really good data work with some of the early stuff that we put out. He's made some really cool scatter plots that show how teams differ in different phases of play in terms of their success. He's shown some team style stuff where you can very quickly and easily compare Austin's team style to other teams. That's what you were looking at when we were talking about like, oh, Minnesota and Dallas play this very different style from
Hmm.
Austin, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that's like a nice first step. It's really cool to see that fans care about this stuff enough to go and do that type of analysis and try to ask those questions. And Jake had a good write up of here's what I've learned about Seattle from that stuff, and he's been posting those things. We've seen other folks have been starting to use the data publicly, and I'm super excited about that. American Soccer Analysis has been using them in a lot of team previews to help try to describe what teams were doing last season and maybe how they're
Hmm.
changing. So I hope that anybody listening to this who has made it this far, who's curious enough about data to want to play around with this stuff, will go do it because we're giving you all this data
Nerds,
to,
nerds
yeah,
like
yeah,
me, yes, who
yeah,
want
go
to
ahead
do
and nerd
this.
out, man.
Yeah, so tell me then. So what's kind of the next phase of this in terms of rollouts? Because I am definitely interested in playing around with this more and seeing what kind of things I can find out digging through the numbers.
Yeah, so right now we've only got interactive tables where you can start to look at the numbers, but in a couple
Hmm.
months, this spring, we're going to start testing the mobile app with users. We've
Hmm.
been developing that, and that's the end product. That's what we're really excited about, and that should hopefully make all this stuff much easier to navigate than just tables. It's got a lot of cool stuff, not just all the usual like live score stats. It's also got a feature that I really like where we have Instagram stories basically of data visuals for
Hmm.
players, every single player, every single team, every match, and at the season level as well, where you can just flip through data vises for all these things and you could share them with people. You can download them,
Hmm.
whatever. And that's the kind of stuff that I was doing at the Athletic. And I might make a cool data viz and put it in an article, and people would be like, "Hey, that's cool. Can I see it for my team?" Right? And I'd be like,
Hmm.
"I'm sorry, I just did it for this one article." Now you can all have all the vises and use them in all your articles.
That's awesome. Great. So what did people do then? What's the next step if you're wanting to get on the
Yeah,
nerd
so
train here?
so the best way to keep up with what's going on is through our Substack because we're publishing updates on what we're doing. It's FutiApp, FUTIAPP substack.com.
Okay.
And so we're going to be publishing model explainers for a little bit. Then we'll start showing off some of those visuals that we just talked about.
Hmm.
And then as we get closer to launch, I will let people know when we start sending out invite codes and you can get on the wait list and you can be one of the first people to use this app. And I hope that you'll also get in our Discord. We've got a
Hmm.
chat where folks can come, and if you've got questions about this or you had cool ideas that you wish we would do, like the fun part about building your own app is if you tell me a good idea, I'll be like, absolutely, let's go do that, right? Let's
Hmm.
let's put it in there right now. And this is
Right.
the phase that we're in, is just getting user feedback on all this stuff and trying
Hmm.
to make you the best app that we can that you guys are going to want to play with.
Okay, good. And then for people who want to learn more about this, I mean, yeah, obviously you've got the Substack. I know American Soccer Analysis does some stuff. Are there other kind of sources you recommend for just doing bigger deep dives into understanding advanced metrics?
Yeah, so if you're curious about soccer stats in general, there are a couple of books that I would recommend. I think that Ian Graham, who was the longtime head of data at Liverpool, wrote a really good book called How to Win the Premier League.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
that is essentially just the story of his time in Liverpool's data department as they were starting to build a lot of the same models that we're now building for Futi. Now they were doing it 10 years earlier, right? They were one of the early like pioneers of data.
Right.
But a lot of the methods that he describes in that book are very similar to what we're doing at Futi. So that's a really good entry point. If you want more of like a history of soccer analytics, I think Ryan O'Hanlon's book Net Gains gives a really good overview of how the field developed, who some of the pioneers were. That's one that I would recommend. And then other than that, yeah, I think American Soccer Analysis does great stuff. They do
Mhm.
really good blogs and they're MLS specific. So that's where both my co-founder and I got our starts working with soccer data, and that's where we met
Mhm.
each other. So if you really want to go deep on this stuff, go hang out with the PhDs who write blogs over there, and you'll learn a lot of stuff.
Right. And I know that, for example, I've been trying to bring a lot of this work to Austin just because that was something that I felt was needed within the space. And I know that there are other writers for various markets that are doing that as well. I know like Sam Jones in Atlanta, he's doing a lot of that work and he's starting to do some of his own R programming and all that too and all that. And I know that
Yeah.
there's Sound Art Heart, you mentioned, obviously they do that. So, and obviously as somebody who has worked in the space and brought data, just maybe close out by just talking about like why that's encouraging, why you think that's maybe a good developing trend that's been happening.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. And it goes back to what we said at the very start of this, which is just that fans are changing, right? Fans are, I think, in a lot of ways, more curious about soccer than they ever have been.
Mhm.
They really want to understand better what's going on. And data gives us one tool for doing that. It's not the only tool, it's not the absolute truth, it's not the be all end all, but data data maybe can't see everything that you can see on the pitch, but it can see a lot more of it a lot faster and it can remember it a lot better than you can. And so it's always a good thing to check what you think against what you're seeing in really thoughtfully prepared data. So I love that a lot of people are asking that kind of question. I love that a lot of people are telling stories in a different way than they did. If you go back even just 20 years ago and read the kinds of things that people wrote about soccer, there was some really great writing, but almost no discussion of what was actually happening on the pitch, right?
Mhm.
No tactical conversation, no data, no really
Right.
analysis of any kind other than like a team tried hard and then like
Yeah.
somebody scored a goal. Like,
Vibes. Right.
yeah,
Vibes. Yeah.
it's pure vibes writing. So like I like that we've got facts and vibes now. I think
Mhm.
that's a positive step.
Awesome. Well, great. We'll really appreciate having you on. And then, yeah, so just follow the Substack, I assume. And then, is there any other places online where you're letting
Oh
people
man,
know
there
about things?
there are so many. So if you
Okay.
want to go to our website and see all the socials, foodie.live is the site,
Mhm.
and you can scroll
Okay.
down to the bottom and see all our socials. So in addition to the Substack, I'm going to start doing a lot of short form video to help people see these models in action. So you can
Okay.
follow on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or whatever your platform of choice is.
Okay.
We've got that Discord. I think it says a lot about our users that a lot of people follow us on LinkedIn rather than TikTok. Like these are really nerdy early adopters, but I love them
Mhm.
for it. So yeah, whatever your platform of choice is, we're on there and you can follow us there.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, thanks. Really appreciate having you on. And yeah, keep doing the good work. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're doing and diving in.
Thanks, Phil. Can't wait to hear how you use it.
Transition.
That was great, Phil, which I say, having not listened to it, but just knowing that you both were incredibly on point, and I can't wait to listen to it myself. Just a brief preview of things for Verde Week for everybody. As you're listening to this, we've got the press conference with Roto, which will be its own thing. That I would encourage everybody to watch it if you're interested in it. Don't
Mhm.
necessarily just pay attention to the commentary. There is a lot of nuance. The club has also started to try to make sure that things that are asked in Spanish get subtitled in English so that people have that. So we'll see if they're able to deliver on that. We're getting a virtual press conference with Nico on Thursday morning, Thursday evening. There's a kickoff party at the Yeti flagship. There is final work being done on a season opener tifo, the details of which are under wraps, but is really
As
really
they
cool,
usually are. Yeah.
as they generally are. It's really cool. It's got various different details that are unique to it. I'm working on getting us a little bit of something, talking with the artist, talking with the folks involved in making it happen so that we can talk about that. And of course, Friday night before the opener is Verde Fest out at Radio
Mhm.
East. La Murga is playing. Various other bands are playing. The homie Ernie Luna is in one of those bands playing. Shout out to Ernie. And Los Verdes is going to be showing up there and selling merch. Some new
Mhm.
shirts, brand new shirts right there in person, and then some that are just becoming available for order on the store. Some interesting variety to be had. Definitely various
Mhm.
bits of the new, including some new enamel pins that I was just notified just came in just in time for the big show. And then
Right. You
more,
teased those last time. Yeah.
yeah, more new stuff to
Along with
come.
Verde and Black goodness.
Yes, indeed.
You want to reveal that we can throw
Mystery.
drop over?
Not really. Pretty much done. It's all wearable stuff. But then there will also be pre-orders, fingers crossed, pre-orders for tifo inspired merch for literally the tifo that is going up this weekend. That the plan goes that those pre-orders will go live just as the tifo goes up on Saturday night. So you'll see it blasted all over the socials, and it will benefit a good cause tied into the theme of the tifo that will also be explained when that reveal happens. So you'll see the design, as in like when the tifo is raised at the game, that's when the pre-orders for the merch go live, including pictures and everything. So you'll know what you're getting.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you'll know what you're getting, including, fingers crossed, we're trying to do a limited edition screen printed poster of the tifo art for the first time.
Ooh.
And so yeah, it's a great theme, it's a great message, and it's a great cause that the merch is going to benefit from the proceeds.
Okay, and I take it Biru is not about to punch somebody in this particular tifo.
Nope.
So that's been done.
Nope.
That's been done.
Nope.
Okay. Does this, without revealing too much, obviously that one that I'm referencing really was impressive. It was new. It was innovative. Is there anything that's going to be special, innovative about this one?
Yes, there is. One of various elements. It's multifaceted when it comes to cool elements. There's one in particular involving motion that hasn't been done in an Austin FC tifo in particular. That's one of my favorite details. But yeah, there are many elements to the story, and I love the way that it has been documented as they've gone. So there are layers upon layers to be revealed, and just in terms of commemoration, there's an element of commemoration that the Austin fan base has not done with the tifo until now that I think is really special.
Okay. Yeah. And then just a couple of site news things, as you might have experienced if you've looked at the site the last few days. Season previews are rolling out. So I have been very, very hard at work on previewing all 30 MLS teams. As you are listening to this, either there are 2 or 3, depending on if this goes up Monday or Tuesday. And that's the first ones, of course, are all the East teams, 5 teams a day over 3 days. And then Wednesday through Friday, we get the West teams, of course, starting with Austin. And also for American Soccer Analysis, I did previews of all the Texas teams, so I'll have links to those embedded within those as well, so you can jump over to those. If you are not a subscriber and you are wanting to get at paywalled content, like for example, the morning after press conference wrap-ups, it is going to be possible to pay for those per article. So if you are itching to read a particular one and you don't want to yet commit to subscribing, you will be able to do that. So I hope that is exciting to everybody.
Cool. I think this is a jam-packed, supersized bit of content we've delivered here for everybody. I think this will keep people fully fed as we head towards Saturday. And I guess you would say the short turnaround breaking news kind of thing, but more just the ruminative variety of thing. So we hope you enjoyed this, and we'll be back later this week before the game on Saturday.
But we will see you Saturday at the stadium. And remember, second winter is coming. So bring some players.
This is the best thing I've heard in the history of the 8 years I've been on this planet.